On behalf of Duke Law School, welcome and thank you for coming from across the country to participate in this conference.
In 2015, it's important for us to consider not only how much has changed over the past few decades, but also how much has remained the same since that time. Today, we find ourselves in the midst of so many movements: Black Lives Matter, Black Girls Matter, Say Her Name, the Dreamers Movement, Occupy Wall Street, and the flurry of movements that have sprung up in college campuses across the nation, from Yale University in Connecticut to the University of Missouri to Claremont McKenna in California.
We began planning this conference over a year ago at the initiative of our law students. At that time, we were reeling from the deaths of Rekia Boyd, Eric Garner, John Crawford, Mike Brown. We, like many of you, had serious concerns about the criminal justice system and law enforcement. Yet we were also concerned about other threats to the ideal of democracy, including the effects of the Supreme Court's ruling in Shelby County versus Holder, which, as you know, was followed immediately by legislative action to erode voting rights acts across the nation and in this state.
What we really hope to accomplish here, other than bringing together all these fantastic people to talk about the present and future of civil rights, is to create a space for interested students to feel like this is something Duke cares about and that this is something Duke Law cares about.
I feel like there's a good spectrum of people who are at the leaders of their field and people who are just emerging in their scholarships, and that's been really nice. There have been students in the room asking questions, so that's been really good. It's just been a crossroads for people from a lot of different fields and a lot of different phases of their career.
What is striking to me is how naive we were in thinking that an end to Jim Crow was going to be the solution.
In universities like this one, in the existence of HBCUs, of which I am an alum, in our prison populations, in our children, in people of color, in the ways in which we find ourselves represented in American society. We haven't yet gotten to the point of that integration that was a promise of the 1960s.
Part of the response, I think, to these changing demographics and the implications of these demographics has been action by state legislatures and actions by the court to get in the way of political participation.
We presented them with reams of evidence of continuing levels of socioeconomic disparity, continuing levels of vote polarization, continuing instances of voting rights violations, consistent patterns across southern states, and so forth. All of that is avoided by cherry-picking a little piece of evidence that says, in the 2012 election, Black participation maybe even exceeded white participation, not recognizing that the reason that African-American participation was equal to white participation was because of voter turnout in predominantly African-American congressional districts that were there in southern states because of the Voting Rights Act.
How are we going to talk about LGBTQ rights as a civil rights discussion when I've been taught all my life that civil rights equal Black rights? And the Black community is not very welcoming to the LGBTQ community. So I wanted to really explore on the panel, how can we begin to change that narrative?
Probably the highlight of the whole conference for me was the talk at the dinner by Kimberly Crenshaw. It was literally life-changing for me. I don't think I'd ever thought about the plight of Black women in the way that I now do, through the lens that I see it through, that she painted for us. I think I also was a part of the problem, and I think that that's an amazing thing when you start to realize that you were a part of the issue.
Thank you to everyone for engaging in a really frank, open, and candid conversation.
You all have been so inspiring, and I have learned so much being a part of this community. So I want to leave you all with this. Clearly, there's a lot of work for us to do. But I think we want to think about collectively, what are the questions that we want to address? What are the lessons that we need to learn? And what ways can we be in conversation with each other to spur one another on, to push one another's work, to expand the scope of our community, and to continue to do the work that matters?